Welcome to the World Class Speaking podcast series. This is a place where you will learn how to present, persuade, and profit by improving your communication skills. Each episode in the series is a chapter from the book World Class Speaking in Action. And each chapter is written by a certified world class speaking coach. I'm your host, Matt Miller, and I've carefully crafted and summarized each chapter in the book. Want to know how to take your presentations from good to great? There is no secret, no magic pill. The way to do this is through consistent practice over time. This episode will showcase the powerful practice techniques that will ensure your practice sessions deliver a confident presentation. This is episode How to Take Your Presentation from Good to Great, and it's authored by Maureen Bell. And Maureen Bell is a certified world class speaker, coach, and she is also a consultant and communication expert. And practicing is the utmost importance because it will elevate you from good to great, from mediocre to magnificent, and from average to aspiring. Repetition is the key to success in mastering any new skill. Repetition consistently and over a long time horizon, that's the masterpiece. That's the key to success. When you're practicing for your speech, you want to make it as close to the real environment that it actually will be when you give the speech. So, if you're at work and you're presenting on Zoom in front of your audience, you can record yourself on Zoom and see how you sound, and then also do it within a live audience on the Zoom. If you're doing a presentation in front of an audience in an arena, if you can get yourself in that arena or a similar arena, that'll replicate what it's going to be when you actually give the presentation, which will help you become more prepared. So it's always important to practice in the environment that you're actually going to give the presentation. Second, if you don't have a live audience, you can always imagine that you have an audience there. And it's not as good as a live audience, but at least you're imagining people there. And it helps train your mind that there will be people there when you actually have the presentation. Next, become comfortable with your stance and your delivery. You always want to practice not only the words in your speech, but how you're going to physically move throughout the speech or how you're going to have hand gestures support the message of your speech. And if you're in a live environment on Zoom or on Teams or some kind of video broadcasting format, it's always good to stand because you can show more emotion, you can move around a little bit more. But if you are sitting, you want to make sure that you at least show, like half of your body and up. Because if you just show your head, you're not going to be able to see the hand motions unless you move your hands up top to where the head area is. Another thing while practicing, and something that I'm guilty with, is when you practice, if you make a mistake, just keep going. You don't need to start all over again. And this will allow you to build confidence, knowing that you can make a mistake and get back on track without making it a big deal. Another thing is, if we start at the very beginning of the speech, and let's say we get through the first couple minutes and then we make a mistake, then we're like, I need to start over. So then we start over, and then the next time we get through the first 3 minutes, then we make a mistake, like, I need to start over. So the next time it's the first 4 minutes, and then we start over. We're practicing the very beginning of that speech over and over and over again, but we're not practicing minutes 4 through 10. So think about it. If you keep starting over, you're going to keep playing that same beginning of the speech over and over, practicing that, but the end of the speech may suffer. That's why it's also important to start from start to finish, even if you mess up. Practice and preparation mitigates failure. There's two sayings that I really like. Practice and preparation mitigates failure, and volume negates luck. The more that you practice, the less likely you're going to be, and the more that you're going to get confident and deliver a great speech. And now I want to walk you through my personalized 10-step framework or process that I use from the very start to the very finish on how I prepare a speech. The very first thing I do when I'm preparing a speech, let's say I have to give a speech for Toastmasters, and Toastmasters is an association where you give speeches in front of a live audience. You get feedback. They'll count your filler words, your ahs, so's, buts. There'll be a panel that grades you. And usually there's 15 or 20 people. But if I was to prepare a speech for Toastmasters, the first thing I would do is I would figure out the time that I have required to speak. And in Toastmasters, it's generally 5 to 7 minutes. And I would say, okay, I know the time that I have. I have 5 to 7 minutes. Then the second thing I would do is, who is my audience? And even from one Toastmasters club to the next Toastmasters club, the audience varies a lot. If you're giving a speech for a corporate audience, you could be giving it to your frontline leaders. You could be giving it to the management staff. You could be giving it to the shop floor operators. Whoever you're giving your speech to, you need to know that because you need to tailor your messaging and the words that you use to that specific audience. So that is number two. I'll know my audience. Now I know my time required and I know my audience. And the third thing I do is I determine the overall through line, the main message of my speech. What is the message that I need to get across? What is that one sentence that, if this is the only thing you got out of the speech, it would make the speech? Now I have the time required, I know my audience, and I know my message. The fourth thing I do is I think of 2 to 3 points that support and directly align with that main message. What are the points that I want to make sure that I get across to my audience? Now I'll have the time required, I'll know my audience, I know my message, and I know my points. Now at this point, I want to get my audience to remember the points. So I include anchors, and an anchor could be a story. So I'll think of what are 2 to 3 stories that support the points in my speech. May not always be a story, it could be an acronym, an analogy, but what can I do to anchor the points of my speech? And that is number 5. Okay, so the first 5 are, I know the time required, say it's 5 to 7 minutes. I know my audience. Let's say it's this specific location and it's through Toastmasters. And then I know the message of my speech. And then I know 2 to 3 points that support that message. And now I know a few stories that support the point, which supports the message. Now, after all that's complete, I start outlining the speech. That's step 6. And then after I outline the speech, I write out the entire speech. And if I write out the entire speech, a good rule of thumb is that you generally speak 125 to 150 words per minute. So if I'm giving a 6-minute speech, it'll typically be about 750 words. And then I write out the entire speech. Then after I write out the entire speech, which is step 7, I move on to step 8, which is practicing the speech. This is the most important part. You want to practice as much as you possibly can. Practice, practice, practice. And when I'm practicing, all I'm doing is trying to memorize all the words in the speech. Then once I have all the words memorized, I move on to step 9. And that's when I add in the visuals, the props, the body language, the audience engagement, and all those types of things. So I'll have the speech memorized, and then I can add in all the colorful stuff that helps support the message. And that's step 9. And then step 10 comes and just practice more. Keep practicing until you nail it down. And those are the 10 steps. Figure out the time required to speak, know your audience, determine the message, determine the points, determine the stories, outline the speech, write out the speech, practice the speech, add visuals, body language, props, audience engagement, and all that type of stuff, and then practice more. And just like with anything in life, the more you do something, the more familiar you become with it. The more repetition you get with something, the better you get at it. Practice, practice, practice. Be consistent. Do it over a long time period, and you're going to start seeing the results. Now that you know the importance of practice and preparation, I encourage you to practice your speech 10 times before you give it in front of your live audience. Remember, volume negates luck. And this episode concludes part 4 of the book, World Class Speaking in Action. Now that we've finished the World Class Speaking delivery section, this finishes the content from the book. Thank you all for listening. I hope you had some key takeaways that you can use in future speeches and presentations. Again, I'm Matt. I'm your guide to improving your speaking, communication, and presentation skills to help you bolster your impact, income, and influence. This is going to be the last episode in the series. Thank you guys for listening. And until next time, have a great day. That's all we've got for this episode on the World Class Speaking podcast series. Until next time, remember that becoming a great communicator is so important because it leads to greater impact, influence, and income. Thank you for listening and have a great day.